I'm honored today to be joined by Priscilla East. Priscilla is dedicated to cultivating her own inner freedom and unconditionally loving relationship with self and consciousness that we have the choice about the experience that we give to ourselves. She is joining me today to help us understand how to end personal suffering and journey towards self empowerment, self liberation, and inner freedom by shifting away from the conditional, lacking, needing, have to get from out there paradigm to the unconditional having, giving, self loving, abundant, dependent on source from within paradigm, which creates the experience of inner freedom. Priscilla, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Rachel, for the invitation to talk about this really wonderful topic.
Well, let's start with you. When and how did your personal journey to self-empowerment and inner liberation begin?
You know, I feel like I came into this life on this journey. I do think that I've been on this path my entire life. But I would have to say that a lot of things really came into focus for me um, in having children. And I think that as a parent, you know, when our children are little, we really can really run the show, and um, and I think over time, our sense of self-worth as a parent becomes very invested in our children and wanting particular outcomes, and it's not necessarily something we're very conscious about. But for me, when my children got older and I started to, um, you know, experience their own self-will and self-determination, and it conflicted with my view of what that would look like in order to validate me as a parent, I just started to have, run into conflict there. And in my heart, I really wanted to be able to love my children unconditionally, which means loving from a place of no conditions. And I didn't feel that that's where I was, and so initially, when I was just, interacting with these conflicts, um, my interpretation was, if they would act the way I want them to, I would feel good and be validated as a parent. And that just over time was a model that really wasn't working for me. It didn't feel good. I felt that I needed to control outer conditions in order to feel good or feel the way I wanted to feel. And I knew intuitively there was something wrong with that picture. And I think in any important relationship, whether it's our children or a significant other, or I think most of us have experienced, there are those few relationships that really shake up our world because we're depending on that outer thing to give us what we seek. And a lot of times it's very, very, very basic things like being valued or being, we want to be valued, we want to be validated, we want to feel worthy, and we want that outer thing to make us feel that way. So we have a dependency on that outer thing to look a certain way so that we can feel that way. And there's suffering involved in that because we're being dependent on something outside of ourselves. So this experience, made me want to find the answer within myself rather than having my children act a certain way or for their lives to look a certain way. I realized that the self-worth as a parent that I really wanted to feel, I needed to have with myself. I needed to grant that to myself and have it so that my feeling of worthiness would not be dependent on my children's choices in life. So that I can't say was an easy thing. It didn't happen overnight. I really did start by, wanting to control outer conditions. But my feeling in my heart that what I really was searching for was to be able to love unconditionally. I knew that that would be an inner journey. I knew that that would be something I needed to find within myself, even though I wasn't even sure how to get there. I didn't know what that journey would look like, but I needed to put one foot on that path. And it was also, I think it's a factor of readiness. I think putting my foot on that path was a factor of being ready to end suffering, my own personal suffering, my need to control outer conditions, um, and being in a place of need and getting from out there and being dependent on externals for what I myself wanted to feel. So I feel that it was a readiness for making a shift, a paradigm shift from needing and getting from external sources and shifting to a paradigm of having within myself and granting to myself what it was that I was seeking and then having it, and then from a place of having, giving.
I think
So
it's interesting when you're talking about your children and wanting to love them unconditionally. I think just that you were able to recognize or admit that you didn't in that moment, right? I think that's so powerful for people to hear, because I think especially, I think a lot of, for me, I don't have children, but I do experience this to some extent in my relationship with my husband, because he's that person in my life who's so close to me, and I want to look to him for that kind of external validation. But I can imagine with children or with family in general that there's that kind of cultural expectation that you just do love unconditionally. So I think that you were able to even say, "Wow, I don't, and I want to," is a huge step for a lot of people.
it is, I mean, I agree with you. I do think it's the ability to recognize, is this experience working for me? Is this model working for me? Do I feel good? Um, I do think how we feel is an indication of whether the model or the paradigm that we're in is working. And I think to be in a paradigm of needing is a perception. I mean, I do feel like human experience is a matter of perception. And when we perceive that we lack and that what we seek is outside of ourselves, that's a painful experience. It doesn't feel good. It's the experience of I don't have, and frankly, that doesn't work for me. Um, and anything that doesn't feel good doesn't work for me, because I feel that I am the cause of my experience. I am the creator of my experience. I'm giving myself my experience every single second, 100%. I am the creator of my experience. There's no one else. No one's, you know, no one else is in the dynamic. It's just myself. And so with that realization, I realized that in order to really feel good, I need to be really, really conscious of the experience I'm giving myself. And so the experience of having is such a powerful experience. But it's so the experience of having is that you have it and you have it to give. And there's nothing that you are not able to give yourself. So it really is a change of perception. And But in this journey, so to get back to what you're saying, which is so important, is that I need to I I need to be ready to take ownership of my experience. I need to take responsibility. And so it's the realization that nothing out there really has anything to do with it. It's it's kind of a realization that I need to shift from looking out there for the answers and getting to going within and realizing that I can grant to myself anything I wish. And I am responsible for my experience. So since I'm responsible for my experience, I want to make that a good experience. And for me, what I also realized is that in order to have and to feel abundant, we I realized for myself it was necessary to feel worthy of having. And to start to really work on my relationship with myself and to clear anything that was counterproductive to the feeling of worthiness, and to start to really be conscious of behaviors like self-judgment and fear and doubt, which is an experience I'm giving to myself. So why would I be doing that? Where's that coming from? And I personally came to the very, very basic work, which I feel is fundamental, and step one, which is of self-forgiveness. And self-forgiveness doesn't mean that we've done something wrong. It means we have the perception that we've done something wrong. So it's perception, and it's I've done something wrong and I have guilt about that, or I have regret, or I feel that I did something wrong. And that feeling keeps us apart from the feeling of self-worth. And it's what I believe is what causes me to feel that I deserve punishment, or I deserve that I'm not worthy of unconditional love. So it's really my relationship with myself and these unresolved things that keep me stuck in the past. That's the inner work, and that's like the unraveling, the undoing, the work with myself to resolve anything that is stands as an impediment or in contradiction to unconditional self-love with myself. So I realized that in order to love my children or anyone unconditionally, I need to have it with myself first. How can I give it if I don't have it? So that's the paradigm that I live in now, is the paradigm of unconditional love with myself. And that if I'm to be with others or be with the world in a way that I really want to be, I need to be with myself that way first. I realized that if I don't do the work of self-forgiveness and completely clear my inner landscape and leave no corner unswept and no stone unturned, I really need to do that work. And for me, it was realizing that anything I'm unable to forgive in another, it's because I haven't forgiven it in myself. And if I don't do that inner work, I will create someone in my life who I judge, who I can't forgive, who I want to punish, because that's what I'm doing with myself. And I'm just creating a reflection of my inner landscape. And so I realized that inner work of self-forgiveness, of truly clearing those unresolved issues with myself, was the work I needed to do with myself if I really, really, really want to experience unconditional love.
And is that where, excuse me, Is that where you would recommend somebody who's totally new to this kind of work, to the self-empowerment journey? Is that where you would recommend they start, is looking at who and what in their life are they not forgiving? Who are they judging? Who are they um, feeling angry or guilty about or towards? Is that the
I
starting
think
point?
that is definitely a good place, but sometimes the reflection can be hard to understand.
Hmm.
Um, I think that can be like a hall of mirrors. Like I see it, but I have no idea what it's showing me.
Okay.
Because I experienced that. I think for me, the most powerful place to start is sort of twofold. It's realizing that whatever I seek to feel, I'm feeling that because I want to have it with myself. Like, for example, self value. I want this person to value me. And what that's showing me is that I need to value myself. And so, what I can do is grant to myself self value so that I have it. And now that I have it, let me start to feel what that feels like. I feel I feel the sense of self-value as I value myself. I value all that I have. I value my situation right now. I value this amazing place that I live and the people in my life. So it's starting to get in touch with the feeling of valuing. And then when you have it with yourself, you have it to give. I value I value you as I'm listening to you. I value what you're talking about. I'm present. Um, so it's really starting to get in touch with what is it that I want to feel, and instead of needing that person to value me or to give that to me, I understand that I'm experiencing this because I want to value myself. I want to have it. And then I want to give it because everything that we give multiplies the feeling of having. So that's part of it. And then the other kind of simultaneous work is realizing that is the self-forgiveness piece. Because in order to feel worthy, I need to do that work of self-forgiveness so that I feel worthy and deserving of having. Because that starts the ball rolling toward I don't need to judge myself anymore. I don't need to be the one who's punishing myself. I can start to unravel that behavior with myself of self-punishment, where I'm holding myself apart and separate from all that I could have. So it's those kind of simultaneous practices. Because I feel like as we do the work of self-forgiveness and having, those understandings of what this person's reflecting to me start to, like, you start to have those aha moments and those, just like those realizations that begin to flow in, um, of what that reflection is showing me. I also think that, I mean, for me at the beginning, because I didn't really understand the reflections, was prayer. I would pray, like, show me what it is that I can't see. Show me my blind spots. Help me to resolve these illusions. Help me to heal my perception. Um, and one thing that was really helpful to me in the work of self-forgiveness was to realize that, because I want to completely clear the landscape of everything that's unresolved, I realized that everything that any person in the world is humanly possible, anything that's humanly possible in the realm of human behavior, I I I acknowledge the possibility that I've done it. whether in this lifetime or another. Like I realize I'm capable. I've done it. So whether I have or not, it's just the possibility that I've done it so that I can clear the landscape and I am not unresolved with myself about that. Because if I'm unresolved, I'm going to judge another. I'm going to be unable to forgive someone else. I'm going to project that
Mm.
out. I've realized so much of the human experience is about projection. We're constantly projecting out a lot of our unresolved things and things that we really want to resolve or we want to realize in ourselves. So if I feel like someone out there, if only they would change, then I could feel what I want to feel. If only they would give me what I lack, then I would be able to do what I want to do. So that's all projection. And and I've realized that projection and reflection back to us, it is our greatest friend. It is our greatest ally because it shows us so much about ourselves. And it shows us what we ourselves need to realize about within ourselves. So when I look at someone outside of myself and I feel like if only they would be different, then I could feel the way I want to feel. So now when I look at that and something kind of triggers me in that way, I look at that and I say, well, what that person is doing, I wish that they would love themselves instead. Or I wish that they would realize their potential.
Mm.
I wish that they would go get a college degree or do this or that. And what I've come to realize is that it's showing me what I really want for myself. So they may be doing something that I don't really feel good about. And it's like a contrast, and it's showing me it's because they're doing that. I wish they would do this because that's what I want for myself. So my takeaway is that's what I want to realize for myself. I want to realize my potential. And I honor whatever they're choosing. They don't need to change. They can be whatever they are. And now I kind of step back and say, let me apply this to myself. Let me empower. This is what I want for myself.
I hear you must have your kitty joining us here.
I do. So I can let
Oh,
him
he's
come
fine.
in.
Yeah, that's fine. He is more than welcome to join us. I love
I'm
his
going to
little
let him in
little
because he's going
voice.
to be meowing. He's going to
What
keep meowing from out there.
he can come and help. Um, well, I love what you're saying there, Priscilla, because I think, those are the moments for a lot of us where we get so angry or upset at somebody else. We're like, how can that person possibly be this way, right? And they have to change. And you're talking about really seeing like that moment and that triggering as like a gift, like,
Yes.
oh, this is showing me where my work is.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I think there's
Yeah.
such, like there's a lot of kind of talk in the self-help and therapy worlds, right, about toxic people and the people that are bad for you and that you should avoid. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that when we encounter people that we want to label that way, it's actually so good for us because the fact that we're having such a reaction to a person is showing us what's really happening on the inside, that that's a tool that we should embrace instead of say, oh, I'm going to avoid ever having those experiences, right? I'm going to avoid those
Absolutely.
triggering people or triggering situations. Um,
Yes, my daily message to myself is out there is not the cause of what I feel. I am the cause of what I feel. I'm the cause of my experience, that I attract what I am, and that everything that I experience in life is a gift. And the reason it's a gift is because it shows me myself. And the universe is constantly giving us feedback. And so when we look at our world and the people we attract, the only way to look at it is what is the feedback that the universe is giving me? How do I like how that looks? And so if I am attracting so-called toxic people, I mean, honestly, the only thing I can, conclude from that is that there's something toxic in my relationship to myself, that I would be triggered, because otherwise relationships, they flow in and out. The things we don't get triggered by just flow on by. It's the things that trigger us. I'm going to just close this real quick. The things that trigger us show us ourself. They show us where we are in the needing, getting paradigm. They show us that we lack something that is begging to be realized. So if a person triggers us, for me, that's showing me a lot. To me, that's like takes me back to the self-forgiveness. I've done it. I've done what they're doing. I've done it. Whatever they're doing, I've done it. And so the reason why I feel judging of them, triggered, wanting to punish them, not able to forgive them, is because I have that somewhere in my own inner landscape. That's why I say step one is self-forgiveness, because I truly feel that what triggers us externally is our unforgiven work, is that thing that we're still judging, we haven't reconciled with in ourselves. We've done it. I've done it, and therefore that's why it's triggering me. And if I have done the work of self-forgiveness, I have gone within, I've really taken a hard look at all of that stuff. When I was starting on this path and really wanting to go in and find the answers within myself, because I will say again, it's never about out there. Whatever it is that's causing our experience, it's not about out there. It is within. And so the answer is within. All the resolution has to do with our relationship with ourself, and the experience of having, and that getting to that place of unconditional love is an inner journey. And so when I realized that that was the case, I started to draw to myself and attract to myself a lot of resources in the form of books. And I mean, it can show up anywhere. It shows up, it just shows up. It starts coming. And I started to just draw from all those different sources and I started to just put together an understanding in my own language, in my own way, using words that made sense to me, so that I could apply it in a way that was truly beneficial, and the progress just started to happen and unfold and move, and there just started to be movement. And honestly, outer things, I have to say, didn't really change, but a lot of things started to change on the inside through my perception and the perception of having. I think we suffer when we are in that paradigm of needing and getting, because we feel that what we seek is outside of ourselves. And we can end that suffering and release that suffering when we realize that all of the answers and all of the having that we seek is within us, and that we have it right now. So what allows us to connect with that having is that inner work of resolving the untruths that we've accepted and the beliefs about ourselves that we've accepted that just don't serve us.
Mm.
That's just a journey, honestly. Um,
Priscilla, you speak with just, I love how like clear and certain you are. Like when you say out there is not the problem, like that I'm creating my experience. Do you remember a point, like, was there a moment in your journey where you just knew, where you were like absolutely certain? Like I see this with some of my clients and with a lot of people I talk to, they're like, yeah, I get that it's coming from in here. I get that it's me and it's my perception that's creating my experience. But there's like a part that's like doesn't quite accept, right? We still get triggered by the outside things and we're still like, but if only I made this much money, or if only my kids would do this, like then it would be easier, right? Like was there a point for you where you were just like, no, I absolutely know for certain that it's all coming from inside? Do you remember that
yes,
moment?
I do. And I think because it was preceded by so much personal suffering
Mm.
and emotional turmoil and outer blame, um, that I came to the place where I asked myself, what is it that I want to feel? You know, here I was struggling with this outer thing, wanting, and in a mode of getting, in a mode of not having, in a mode of wanting to control outer conditions so that I would feel what I wanted to feel. And it was so unproductive. It was
Mm.
so completely um, unfulfilling that I realized this is so not working. This just feels so bad. I really, really want an answer. I really, really want a different experience. And that's when I asked myself, what is it that I want to feel? And I realized what I want to feel is I want to feel self-worth as a parent. I want to feel good about myself as a parent because I feel like as a parent, my intentions were so honest. I honestly did come from a place of great integrity, but I couldn't control the outcomes. And we can't control outcomes with our children or with outer conditions of any kind. And so I had to like come to a reckoning of I can't control outcomes. And so, but yet I want to feel good. And so it was asking myself, what is it that I want to feel? And that in order to feel this, the only way to have it is to grant it to myself. And that was the moment where the realization started to come. And I realized that like self-value, self-validation, self-worth were probably the most fundamental things that when I thought back to even to my childhood and with significant adults in my life, my parents, and other ways, other significant um, relationships that had shown up, it was always the issue of self-value that was at the heart of all of them. So it was something that kept showing up again and again, and it was the basic feeling of self-value and self-worth, and that if I was to feel that, I needed to have it with myself, that I couldn't depend on something outside of myself to give it to me or to make me feel that way, because the issue was not having it.
Yeah.
And that even if someone valued me, I wouldn't even feel it if I didn't have it with myself. So that was the big realization, was that anything that I really want to feel, I have to have it with myself. I can't depend on an external source to give it to me. It's kind of like that. I equate that to like the analogy or the story of the Holy Grail, from medieval times. That now my kitty's scratching on the wall. Hey, the Holy Grail to me is sort of, and there are a lot of stories like this, that are sort of, it's something that you seek after, but you never find. You go seeking all over the world, and you seek for this thing that is somehow outside of yourself, and you never find it, and you never achieve it, because it's not outside yourself. It's inside yourself. It's with yourself. And so there's the realization that I came to is that there's no other relationship that we should focus on more than our relationship with ourselves, and begin that work of having an unconditionally loving relationship with ourselves, and be conscious of the relationship that we're having with ourselves, and make that a beautiful experience, and make it everything that we want to have. Because coming from a place of giving, you realize there's nothing else that you need. And it's sort of a paradox, is that the more we work on having and really feeling all that we have, and there's nothing that we can't have. It's not about material things. It's a feeling. It's a sense. And the more you really feel this self-worth and this self-value, and the more you give that with other people, you sort of feel like the less you really need in the way of material things. It's like, let me divest myself. let me divest myself of this outer baggage, because true wealth is inner wealth. And it's just a state of being. It's a state of perception. And it's here right now. It's with us right now. And it's a feeling of, I've resolved whatever kept me apart from that feeling of worthiness. And now in that feeling of worthiness, somehow I've just kind of come to a place of like oneness with having. I'm in a place of inner oneness with the source of everything, that just everything comes from there.
I love how your journey has been so like very much your own, right? You started this inner work, and then you found some outer resources to draw from. But you were talking about how important it was for you to find your own language and find your
Mm-hmm.
own path. And I'm thinking for people who are getting started on this work for themselves, maybe you could speak to that a little. I'm wondering if there were any particular mentors or teachers or gurus that had a strong effect on you, but also how much and how important do you think it is for somebody starting out, to be looking for that guidance versus kind of muddling through on their own, and how do you kind of reconcile the personal process and putting your own words to it in your own language with finding resources and drawing from guidance that's already out there?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think so much about this journey is releasing dependencies. And so I honestly wouldn't name a particular source, because I think that's going to be different. And I think for every person, and I think drawing to yourself is so much a part of the journey too. And I think it's really key to not replace one dependency for another. So not to become dependent on some other outer source, to release one only to become dependent on another.
Right.
I was raised by my family in the Quaker faith, and that is, I feel like, is a faith of inner independence. It's a faith, where they practice silent worship, and it's an emphasis on having your own direct relationship with God, with your idea of the creator or source, um, your own higher self, whatever you really want to call that, or whatever it is for yourself. But it's having a direct experience where you don't have you don't rely on an external intermediary. You don't rely on an external something between you and God. It's direct. So having been raised with that and very comfortable with that, I think that's a big part of um, my own comfort level with independence
Mm.
and inner work and an inner journey, because I feel like the answers are within, and it's not something to be afraid of. It's not something to feel as foreign. It's the most not foreign place, and it's what is truly ours. It's truly our own. And so whatever works for a person to start to get to know their own inner place, is the place to start.
Yeah.
But I think there's trust there. It's kind of like, what do I want to feel with myself? I want to feel trust. I want to feel safe. I want to feel secure. I want to feel capable. I want to feel empowered. I want to be my own guide. Um, I want to feel magic. I want to feel able to see and interpret. I feel like prayer is important, because there has never been a time when I prayed that I didn't get an answer. And it's something that I didn't know before I prayed, so somewhere these answers come from somewhere. And I think it's learning to trust that. It's learning to listen. It's learning to depend on it. When I was young and having grown up the way that I grew up with that inner trust, I had huge dependence on that. I would say, I'm riding my bicycle, which way should I go? I had the experience once as a teenager where I was at this kind of like a swimming hole, and it was in the woods, and it was very shaded by trees, and it was dark. The water was dark because it was shaded. And I was going to dive in, but something was like, no. Almost like a physical pulling me on my shirt. And I listened to it, and I was like, I listened. I listened to what that inner guidance was. And so I waded in instead, and under the surface, not visible from outside, was a huge boulder that I would have dove head first into. So I have always depended on and listened to my inner self. And I guess that's what I encourage, is begin to trust your inner guidance.
Do you have, for someone who didn't grow up in a faith or is not actively having any kind of relationship with the source or a God, do you have any recommendations for how someone could intentionally cultivate that faith or that connection with their inner guidance?
I would simply, I think it's sort of getting in touch with your relationship with yourself and realizing that's the most important relationship on the planet. It's the most important relationship that we have. It's the foundation of everything. Um, and so it's simply asking yourself, what is it that I want to feel? Um, and I think for most of us, it is self-value. It's self-worth. It's feeling validated and realizing that we need to have it with ourselves and we need to grant it to ourselves. And in order to feel worthy, it's doing that work of self-forgiveness. So I don't think you have to have anything other than that. I mean, for me, I suppose I do feel like it's important to have something to believe in. Um, I feel like there are things that sometimes I don't know. And I sometimes think of a higher self. You know, there's some aspect of my design as a human being where I may not know it all right now with my conscious mind, but I can ask for it. I can ask for it to be shown to me, and it comes from somewhere. What that is, I don't necessarily need to define that. I don't need to know what that is, but I just know from experience that it works. It comes. You know, when I ask for that guidance or for that insight, it comes. Um, Does that answer the question, or is there more to that?
No, that's very helpful. I think because I know, people are in so many different places with their
Mhm.
understanding or belief in a God, and no, I think you said that really very clearly, that it's all about cultivating that relationship with self. And when you get stuck or lost, turning inward and asking those questions. And in your personal experience, you've received guidance, whether that's from within yourself or a higher self or God. No, I think that's very clear, and I think something that people can try, right? If
Mhm.
even if they don't have a religion or a faith, what happens when I turn inward, working on my relationship with self, and ask for some kind of guidance or knowing?
I
Yeah, I
mean,
think.
honestly, I have to say is don't be afraid to self-empower. Don't be
Mm,
afraid to be the source of your own answers. Don't be afraid. I mean, I joke with my kids and I say, you know, make up your own rules on the inside. I mean, still obey the speed limit and obey those basic rules of society that make sense, but don't be afraid to make up your own rules and to question everything. I mean, I mean, a question the things you were raised in that told you that you were a sinner. I mean, you know, anything that makes you feel bad about yourself, I have to question that. I do question that big time. You know, I am the chooser of the experience that I'm having, and I have become very, very selective.
mm,
So I don't bring into my experience anything that I feel is not positive and loving to myself. I question everything. And so it is the courage to self empower and say, I'm making up my own rules for my relationship with myself because I'm the giver to myself of the experience that I'm having. And the thing that I find beautiful about unconditional love is that it's not based on conditions. It's not based on outer conditions.
mm,
So if things are going on externally, I pick and choose my experience. If something is, you know, like I know that people get very upset about world conditions and all the things that go on externally. And I do observe those things, but I choose to say, I see that. That's not what I want. This is what I do want.
mm,
That thing is negative. I don't want that. This thing, a solution to that is positive. That's what I do want, because that gives me a positive experience for myself. And I feel like positive is what is loving to myself. I feel that this journey is one of being very, very conscious and selective in our choosing of the experience we give ourselves. So it's sort of managing our perceptions. So rather than letting out there dictate, I don't. I choose by managing my perceptions. And I look more at solutions than problems because that feels better to me. And if something does trigger me, I thank the universe. I say, I know you're showing me something that's going to help me liberate something in myself that I haven't yet looked at. I know for my own journey, it was the really big thing that I wanted to resolve first, and that was the hardest, but it helped to give me a model and a formula that I can apply to everything. And so where I feel like I am now is that the lessons and the things I'm seeing are much smaller and much more subtle, but much less upsetting. So my state of inner peace and inner emotional equilibrium is much more stable. And to me, that was the goal, because the turbulence was not something I enjoyed. It's something that I wanted to be free of. It's something I wanted to manage from the inside. And so that's where I started the journey. And it wasn't clear to me what that was or where I was going, but I've been doing this for long enough now where I understand it now. And I understand what other people, I can see what other people are dealing with, and it's really not that difficult. That's the thing. That's such a paradox. It seems so difficult at the beginning, but the answer is right there. It really is. It's right there, and we have it within us. And it's really about making the shift from needing and getting and having outer dependencies and having a conditional experience, and making that shift to having and giving and an unconditional experience where you give to yourself what it is you seek and you have it and then you give it, because it's that feeling that makes you feel so abundantly rich.
What would I feel like you've given us a lot of tools throughout the course of this conversation. But what you just said, that it's not so hard, that it's right there. The answer is right there, even though it feels, when you're not aware of it yet, right? It feels so far away. For somebody who's in that place right now, who feels like the answer is so far away and that inner freedom is so far away, what is like the one thing you would tell them to do today to start on this journey? Is there kind of one step?
Take ownership. Own your experience.
It's really that letting go of the perception of being a victim in your life.
Totally. The victim perception is the needing, getting paradigm. It's the paradigm of not having. It's the paradigm that out there is the cause of what I feel. Out there is responsible. That's a very upside down feeling. That's a feeling of suffering, of I have no control. So to say that I'm going to 100% own my experience, it's making that shift. But it does require readiness. It requires readiness. I can't think of any other way of putting it other than I'm ready to take responsibility that I am 100% the creator of my experience. I'm doing it. I'm giving it to myself. There are no accidents. Everything that I have experienced, I have given to myself. I've created it from the inner landscape of my relationship with myself. My relationship in the needing getting paradigm is a relationship of not feeling worthy, because I have work to do on my self-forgiveness. I don't feel worthy of having. I feel guilt. I feel that I'm a sinner. I feel that I've done something wrong. I'm not worthy of having. And so therefore I punish myself. I'm not worthy of having. That's what puts us in the victim needing getting paradigm, is that relationship with ourself where we don't feel worthy of having. And no one out there can resolve that. Nothing. We have to do the work. We have to be ready to make that shift and to say, I own my experience. I'm the creator of it 100%. 100%. That leaves nothing out. That leaves nothing to put on the outside. I'm ready to end my own suffering. I'm ready to be empowered. I'm ready to have all, because I am the giver to myself of that experience. That's truth. That's just, I mean, it's there. It's there. It's available to every one of us. And it's a choice. Honestly, one or the other is a choice. It's a choice that we're making. So even if we're in the victim needing getting paradigm, that's a choice that we're making. We're making the choice to be disempowered. Why we would want to make that choice, honestly, I can't really answer that. That to me is not a positive experience. I that's not attractive to me personally. That's not where I want to be, so, but it is a choice. It's a choice that every person is making. So the choice to feel like I don't have an answer, that's a choice. Everything is a choice. Honestly, there are no exceptions to that.
Priscilla, I think that is such an empowering place, perhaps, to leave people today. That you do, to accept that ownership, right, and say, I do own this, but also to realize that whether you accept it or not, you do own it, right? You're making
Yes.
the choice either way, even if you're
Yes.
in that place of being a victim. That's
Mm-hmm.
still you creating that
Yeah.
experience. You're choosing. That was for me, that felt very empowering. It was like, oh, I don't have to learn to do something new. I'm already doing it. I'm already choosing and creating my experience. Now that I'm aware of that, what do I want it to be?
Yes. Thank you for rephrasing and putting that in those words, because that's exactly it.
I think that's that's so clear, and you said that so beautifully. Own it. I love it. That's
Mm-hmm.
a wonderful place to start. Well, Priscilla, thank you so much for sharing so much of your journey and all of these things that you have discovered. I think that's going to reach a lot of people and help them. I think the language that you use and the way you talk about your journey is going to be really accessible to a lot of people who are in different places along the way.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I love this topic. It's so invigorating and so inspiring to myself in my relationship to myself. So I love to share it. So thank you so much. You are a blessing.
Oh, well, thank you. This was really fun. And for me personally, I learned so much. So I'm excited to share it. Thank you.
Thank you.